Welcome to another episode of The Launchpad. I'm your host, Dave Kluge. As always, joined with two great guests. Today we have Travis Masterson and Dustin Blanton from the Losing Sucks podcast. And we are going to be taking a look at next week's free agency frenzy. Of course, we're going to be talking about Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers, but what about Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and some of the under-the-radar quarterbacks? Could they be potential week one starters? We're going to discuss that. We're also going to look at the running back class, which of course lost Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard to the franchise tag, but still has a ton of depth that is going to shake up the entire running back landscape. We're going to talk about the available wide receivers and tight ends as well in a great episode of The Launchpad. So be sure to stick through to the very end of this week's episode of The Launchpad. Where will Lamar Jackson play in 2023? That and so much more on today's episode of The Launchpad. Travis, start us off here, though, man. Rumors are swirling. Where do you expect to see Lamar Jackson play in 2023?
I cannot imagine him in a different uniform than Baltimore. I don't know that it will be a massive offer from somebody that Baltimore can't match. I feel like if that were to happen, it already would have. So I feel like it'll be somewhat reasonable. I'm sure there will be some offers, but I think Baltimore will match. We've seen Harbaugh say for what feels like 2 or 3 years now, Lamar will get paid. Lamar's not going anywhere. So I'm trying to see through all of the drama that is on social media and on ESPN about Lamar could go here, Lamar could go here. And then you immediately get a list of 8 teams that are saying we're not making a bid. I'm going to stick with what Harbaugh is saying. He's one of those coaches that I kind of believe what he says.
Yeah, he's very much so a player's coach. But, man, things really are getting weird. And Dustin, let me hear what you got to say first, and then we can kind of riff on this a little bit. Where do you expect Lamar Jackson to play this year?
Well, my take's a little bit controversial, Dave. I think he's going to be playing in Baltimore. I kind of echo parts of what Travis said. I think that this approach by DaCosta is kind of calculated in Baltimore. I'm not going to use the C word and say that there's backdoor talks, but I think they kind of have an idea of where the NFL wants to go with these contracts. So I think they kind of know what they're leading him into. So I think it was more of a calculated risk that they expect to come back with a favorable outcome. I don't think he's going anywhere, but it is fun to prognosticate and see and talk about where we think he could go. It's added that extra spice in this kind of slow season for NFL news.
Yeah, it's not often that you see a franchise quarterback kind of in contract limbo like this. I mean, when you see a guy this good, like winning MVPs single-handedly, just dragging his team to victories that they shouldn't be winning, these are the guys that you just see all the time. Like, we're not thinking twice about this. We're giving this guy $300-400 million and making him the long-term answer. So this is kind of bizarre to see. So let me just, like I said, we'll riff on this a little bit. Sure. Is there any chance that Lamar Jackson holds out? Because it seems like what he wants right now is a big guarantee. Like, he wants to be set up for his kids and his kids' kids and his kids' kids' kids. I mean, that's the type of contract that he is looking for right now. So if he doesn't get a deal on the open market, if Atlanta and Detroit and some of these other teams that might possibly be in the running for him, if they don't make an offer and he goes back and he has to play on the 1-year franchise tag, do you think there's any chance that he just says, nope, I'm not doing it, I'm not playing this year?
I think that's an exceptionally acceptable point of view. I think, and I agree with it, I think that there is a good chance that he does hold out. I would if I were him. You've already seen that he's taken on some injury. He's taken. Let's just turn it on a different perspective. He's taken on a larger load of the offense. Whether or not you want to agree with the front office speak of, the wide receivers haven't hit, or we've had some injuries at some key positions. Regardless, Lamar Jackson has done more with less than I could say, than any other quarterback in the league. So you can kind of take it either way. I tend to think that, he's deserved this contract. And why would you put yourself at any more risk? You just saw a contract that Daniel Jones got. Why would you play under a franchise tag that pays you less than he got? One more season when an injury and now you're damaged goods and you're lowering your ceiling. You stand to gain nothing. So I would hold out if I were him. I think he'll get the deal. I don't know when that's going to come. It could come training camp. It could, closer to the season. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, I know you mentioned the C word earlier. Just to clear that up, we were talking about collusion, nothing else here. Get your
Yes.
minds out of the gutter. And that is what a lot of people are saying, is that there's like some collusion to drag down the quarterback market.
Right.
And I don't know if that's really the case. If there is any sort of collusion, if we're going to go that route, I almost think that it's
Right.
kind of them saying, hey, we just don't want to do the dirty work for Baltimore. You guys were unable to give him
Right.
an offer. We're not going to do the work now. Give him the offer and let you sign. So if there is any sort of backdoor conversations happening, I think it's
Mhm.
more, hey, let's not make him an offer now. Because then next year when they have to pick up that franchise tag, then they're looking at what, a $48 million franchise tag, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Then they're
Right.
much less likely to pay that.
Right.
And then it's the open market. You don't have to give up the first round picks. You don't have any sort of, fear of giving him an offer that they're going to pull him back into Baltimore. So if there is any
Right.
collusion, it might just be a short-term 1 year and then say, hey, let's let him be an unrestricted free agent next year. I don't know, man. This can go so many different ways. Travis, do you have anything else on here that you want to add?
Yeah, I kind of have a piggyback question, and that is, why does he not have an agent?
Good
Like,
point.
does this not highlight the need for a good agent? Like, we saw Kyler get a deal. His agent did a terrible job to that whole process
Mhm.
of making Kyler look good and like your franchise guy. It eventually got done. Um, but I feel like when you're talking about this kind of money, why do you not have a professional negotiating for you? And that could be a reason why. Like, he doesn't have somebody, and we don't know this, but just for the fact of him not having an agent, he doesn't have somebody in the room, at least that we know about, that is reasonably telling him this is a good deal, this is a bad deal. He could make up his mind on what he wants, and there's no negotiation. We don't really know, but it just feels like if I'm Lamar, I'm hiring an agent and then I'm getting a good deal.
Now that's a whole nother layer to this, and we
Yeah.
can keep going off on tangents. I could literally talk for the entire show on this Lamar Jackson contract. But let's the one thing I'll say about an agent though is, I think that we have this idea that what an agent does is, the best interests of the player. They're trying to maximize
Sure.
the player's value and get them as much money as possible. But I think one of the reasons that we as talking heads trying to figure out this situation are struggling so much is because the other purpose of these agents is to be that bridge between the team, the player, and the media. So when you
Yeah.
hear all of these Adam Schefter leaks and Tom Pelissero leaks, those are coming from agents. So when those conversations
Yeah.
are happening, the agent leaves the room, picks up his phone, calls Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter gets all the juice. So right now, let's say Arthur Blank and Lamar Jackson, Arthur Blank, owner of the Falcons, if he calls
Mhm.
up Lamar Jackson, nobody knows about that phone conversation besides Arthur Blank and Lamar Jackson. There isn't an agent there
It's
to
very
parrot the
true.
conversation to
Right.
Adam Schefter. So I think right now, what you're saying, he should have an agent. I'm with you in theory, but if he ends up getting the franchise tag this year, doesn't play, hits the unrestricted free agent market, and goes and signs with the team of his choice for a fat contract next year, I think we're going to see a lot of teams or a lot of players say, "I don't need an agent." Like,
Yeah, if it
we can
works
make it a
out,
players
that could
market.
be the new
Yeah.
thing.
We've
Yeah.
seen
So
Rashawn Gary do it. He's done it successfully as well.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of ways that this can go. I put the onus on you guys to answer the question: where will Lamar Jackson play in 2023? I'm going to cop out because I don't have an answer. I'm just excited
Love
to
it.
see where this goes, and I'm going to make my guests force themselves into having a take. But anyway, want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. Episode 63 of the Launchpad. Now you can find this on all Football Guys channels. So youtube.com/Football Guys. You can search Football Guys wherever you listen to your podcast, and you'll find this, the Audible, the Football Guys College Football Show, the Dynasty Show, and so much more. Last week, I was with Ray Garvin and Daniel
Nice.
Harms as we were talking about the NFL Combine. Great show. Go back and listen to it if you have not already. We recorded before the Combine, and so many of the things that they said would happen ended up happening that weekend. So check it out. Two really smart minds. Typically what I do is I have two guests that I think would, mesh together well on a show. Today I'm switching it up a little bit different. Travis and Dustin, the guests that I have today, are both a part of the Losing Sucks podcast. And I was on their show a couple of months back, and it was so good that I just didn't want to separate them. They got a really good rapport. They're really fun guys to talk with. So today I'm joined with Travis Masterson and Dustin Blanton of the Losing Sucks podcast. Travis, you go first. Let everyone know where they can find you on social media, where they can find the podcast, YouTube channel, all that fun stuff.
Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube at Losing Sucks and Twitter at Losing Sucks. I predominantly run the Twitter account. So any dumb takes on Twitter, you can take up with myself. And then
Perfect.
Dustin will oversee and kind of question my logic.
Really, just
which
what
is,
the heck's going on here?
Yeah, he's kind of babysitting my takes on Twitter, which is important. Dustin, anything to add on the plugs that I missed?
For sure, yeah. I mean, you can find us on YouTube as well, youtube.com/losingsucks. And like you said, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and you can also check out our website. We're over at losingsucksfantasy.com. And yeah, we really appreciate you having us on, Dave. This is always a fun experience getting to sit down and chat with you.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. And we already asked the one question, where will Lamar Jackson play in 2023? I got another question. Where will Aaron Rodgers play in 2023? Dustin, start us off here, man.
I think he's gonna live in a cave, Dave. I think I think the odds of that are actually, they've got good numbers on Vegas right now. But man, I thought about this for a few minutes, and I could cop out and just say, what big media is saying. The Jets right now. There's a good, all the Diana Rossini reports and all this other good stuff. Is that a likelihood? Probably. But in a word, the man is an enigma. I really believe he's gonna play football. Maybe. I'm gonna say the Jets. I'm gonna land on the Jets and cross my fingers and hope he's just out of the NFC North.
Both of you guys are hoping that it's not with Green Bay.
Right. Just leave.
Please. Cave or New York.
And then Jordan Love's going to have a Hall of Fame career, so we just here we go.
I already made the joke today.
I saw that.
Yeah, that I need Jordan Love a jersey swap for the 2037 offseason. I mean, it is kind of hilarious that things seem to be falling that way. But Travis, you answer the question first, and then we can talk about this a little bit. Where do you think he plays?
I think it's the Jets. Aaron Rodgers is my favorite player in the NFL. He has been since Donovan McNabb retired. I believe it will be the Jets. I think that the weapons are there. The coaching staff is there. It's a change of scenery, which he was talking to Pat McAfee on their show. And I don't know if it was AJ Hawk or Pat, but somebody said it's just really refreshing to get a new start. And even if it's just a 2-year deal, it's not a long-term commitment given his age. Just go have fun somewhere new. You already know what you can do in Green Bay. You don't have to prove anything there. So, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers starts for the Jets. I think Jordan Love steps in. And
hopefully
I would be shocked to see him anywhere but Green Bay or the Jets.
Yeah, so we know the weapons are there. You said it, Travis. So let's talk about the most obvious of these weapons. Garrett Wilson, who was a tale of two seasons. It was either, an electric wide receiver one when Zach Wilson was on the bench, or a dud, just a real bother to be in your lineup when Zach Wilson was playing. So looking at the types of wide receiver ones that Aaron Rodgers has supported throughout his career, we're looking at, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, even Randall Cobb, James Jones had a wide receiver one season in there. Are we expecting Greg Jennings? Of course, yeah. I mean, are we looking at Garrett Wilson as just a set and forget top 10 wide receiver this year if they get Aaron Rodgers?
I believe so. I have more shares of Garrett Wilson since all of these startup dynasty drafts I think in the offseason I've done 5 or 6 already, and I think I have 5. I don't think I got 100%, but I think I have 5 shares of Garrett Wilson in that time, whether it's second or third round. With or without Aaron Rodgers, I'm very excited about him, but obviously you give him Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to say Devontae Adams, but I do feel like top 10 is a pretty easy set and forget.
Yeah, I feel like top 10 is almost like the floor. I mean, we're looking at potential wide receiver one overall outcome.
Absolutely.
Because that's just the type of player Aaron Rodgers is. He's going to spread it out all over the field. He likes to find his guy and force feed him. So I think we're all in agreement that Garrett Wilson is going to be the obvious benefactor if this happens. So let me get a little bit deeper here. Dustin, maybe Elijah Moore? Is he back on the menu? Like, can we believe in Elijah Moore if Aaron Rodgers ends up in New York?
I really like Elijah Moore for that team, mostly because this fall off that one there's not really an archetype of wide receiver that I've seen or any relatable case where you have this amazing starburst of a rookie season and then just absolutely fall off, and just you have to forget about him and then you expect him to come back. So with Elijah Moore, I think infusing a Hall of Fame level quarterback, it can't hurt, but also the talent, I don't think it just evaporated. I think it's still there. So yeah, I think he's definitely hop up into I think being a Tyler Lockett type wide receiver 2, higher end wide receiver 2 can definitely be within his range of possibilities given the scenario.
Yeah, I like that comp. I mean, people are going to get really excited about everybody in New York, and everybody's going to start moving up draft boards. But the two things I will know is that I'm going to want Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson on as many teams as I possibly can get them on. All right. Now we've talked about the two big names, and technically, Aaron Rodgers isn't even a free agent, but it seems like he's going to be moving sometime next week. So now let's get down the list of quarterbacks a little bit, and I'm just going to lump all of these guys into one question. Out of this list, out of these four guys that I'm going to name, who do you think is most likely to start a game in week 1? Travis, start us off here. Jimmy Garoppolo, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, or Baker Mayfield? Who is most likely to start a game?
Man, I think all three of us might feel differently about this question. I'm going to go with Sam Darnold. I think 25, 26 years old, former top pick. I still think that teams may feel he's just had an unlucky start. It feels like he can have a 4 or 5 game stretch every year that looks like a number 1 pick. And then for whatever reason, whether it's the coaching staff or health of the weapons around him or health of his own body, something has always happened to Sam Darnold. It feels like over the last 2 to 3 years. So a healthy, good situation, I don't think, kind of like Dustin was saying with Elijah Moore, I don't think that you go from being a really, really high prospect to just sucking. So I think it's coaching. I think it's health situation. If he can leave the Panthers and fall into a place that doesn't ask him to do way too much and just plays to his strengths, I think Sam Darnold can be a serviceable quarterback. There's a lot worse quarterbacks, I feel, that are in this group. Like we've seen Jimmy give you enough, but everybody knows like what the limits are. Carson Wentz, as polarizing as it gets in fantasy football, why would you sign Carson Wentz over Sam Darnold?
I think Carson Wentz's days are over, unfortunately.
I think so too. Like, how many times do we have to see this? Whereas Darnold, it was like the Jets, they sucked. Yeah. It's so hard to say that was his fault. The Panthers, they sucked, but so much was going on. So, I don't know. I just feel like Sam Darnold is out of that group. If it works out at 26, he can give you a really solid few years.
No, like I don't disagree with that. I forget who. I was listening to somebody recently that they said they expect Sam Darnold to kind of have like a Geno Smith career arc where he's kind of the forgotten guy, disappears for a couple of years, and then comes back like a phoenix out of the ashes and just, has a late career boom. And I can see it because like you said, we see it's like every single year we see 5 games or so where it's like, all right, Sam Darnold finally figured it out. And then he turns back into a pumpkin. So somebody is just going to need to figure out how to stretch that longevity out for more than a 3 or a 5 game sample. I don't disagree with that one, Travis.
I mean, it was like Adam Gase, Matt Rule, Ron Rivera. Like, he needs a chance.
Yeah.
That's just a bad hand.
When he went to Carolina and he rushed for, 115 yards in a game or something like that? Like, he looked incredible and then turned into a pumpkin like he always does.
Just give him some help and see what happens.
Wild.
Dustin, same question to you. Out of that group, and let me reread it one more time for anybody that missed. Jimmy Garoppolo, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, or Baker Mayfield. Who do you think could be a week 1 starter or will be a week 1 starter?
I'm going to come out and say it's a definite yes that Jimmy Garoppolo will be a week 1 starter. I think you look at what NFL teams, I believe, look for. They look for success and they look for winners, guys who have been on winning teams and I guess just know that the score needs to be higher than the other team to win. And Jimmy Garoppolo has been in winning scenarios. He's been on winning teams. He knows what winning looks like. So I guess that's important. And so I think he's going to be on a team. We've heard the Texans talk about him. We've heard, teams like the Panthers could use him as a bridge to a rookie. There are scenarios, and I feel like there's a good amount of them. Raiders we've talked about with connections with that front office and Josh McDaniels. I think that Jimmy has a lot of suitors that make sense for him, that want his services, that also have other options to use what Jimmy does best, and that is lead to a better quarterback. And I think Jimmy G will be the week 1 starter. Now, at the end of the season, I don't think he's a starter, but I think he's going to be their week 1.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And another team that would make a lot of sense for him that you didn't even mention is Miami. Right now we're hearing some concerns about Tua. There isn't any guarantee
Tua,
that he's – I know. But we just – it's early in the offseason, and we're hearing that he might not – Yeah, and he's got the ties to Mike McDaniel there, and then it's a very similar offense, where he was just
Right.
checking down little dump offs to George Kittle and Debo Samuel. Now he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They don't ask the quarterback to do too
Right.
much in that offense, and he understands the
It's a
offense.
great call.
So
Yeah.
Miami could be one, and Las Vegas, like you said, with the ties with Josh McDaniels, that's my pick. Jimmy
That's good.
Garoppolo is the guy that fantasy football players hate him because he doesn't put up the best numbers, but there's so
So
much more
handsome.
than just loading up the stat box. And like you said, he knows how to command a field and play that game manager role, and a lot of coaches really like that. So I do like Sam Darnold, Travis. I like that call up, but I'm going with Dustin here. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo somehow finds his way into a week 1 starting role. Now that's it for quarterbacks, because once we get past
There we go.
we already got pretty gross there, scraping the bottom of the barrel, but it gets really bad after that.
Carson
Talked about
wins
Baker
for
Mayfield.
the next
That was
hour.
really close.
Baker Mayfield. Let's talk. I'm going to
Real
throw it out
quick,
there
yeah.
really quickly. It wouldn't surprise me. You hear these rumors about Matthew Stafford possibly getting traded and then blowing the team up. I don't know why. Sean McVay apparently had a flight with Baker Mayfield and fell in love with the guy. And, he was like
Gosh.
adamant in bringing him into Los Angeles last year. So that could be a possibility as well. That's why I threw these names in here. Fun conversation. But let's talk
Yeah.
about some wide receivers.
I love it.
I'm not sure. I have a feeling we're all going to agree on this first question that I'm going to ask. But of all of the available wide receivers, who gets the most money and who do you expect it to be? Dustin, start us off.
I would love to start this off because my answer might surprise you. I think it is going to be whoever signs last out of Juju Smith-Schuster and Jacoby Myers.
All right.
I think they're very similar in age, very similar in production, and I think whoever signs first, I think the other one can make a case that I deserve more. So I think whoever signs last out of those two.
I didn't even really think about the timing all that much, but that is important. Of course, last year, though, we saw Christian Kirk day 1 of free agency get an $85 million bag. So who knows? I mean, it's a
And
free
he
agency.
proved us
Always,
all wrong for freaking out about
wild.
it too.
hey, speak for yourself. I was touting Christian Kirk all
He
off
balled
season.
did.
Yeah, I like him. And I mean, right now, one of my spicier takes is I've got him ranked ahead of Calvin Ridley, and everyone's going goo for
I
Calvin
agree.
Ridley.
Same.
I agree.
Same.
We both agree. Yeah.
Christian Kirk looked fantastic last
He's
year.
so good.
One thing, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, as long as he was in Arizona, we're getting off on so many tangents
Right.
here. I'm
I
sorry, but
love
Cliff Kingsbury, as long as he was in Arizona, he was great with veterans. Like he could bring in DeAndre Hopkins and Zach Ertz and James Conner and get the most out of these guys. But you look, every single player that was drafted by Cliff Kingsbury ended up being a bust. He didn't know how to develop talent, and
No.
so many good players that came through there. And Christian Kirk was one of those guys, felt like he was never playing to his strengths,
Right.
but we could see it that he was a great wide receiver. So I'm so happy to see him in Jacksonville thriving. I expect him to be the wide receiver 1 there for years to come.
He's a great buy right now.
He is.
In Dynasty, speaking Dynasty, Calvin Ridley with the letter of
absolutely.
I'm going for 1,400 yards. Immediately, people read that and think, well, there goes Christian Kirk's value. Okay, go get him.
Yeah.
And you can. I sent out 3 offers. People are thinking about it right now. And the offers I sent, I'm
Love
like,
it.
if I'm on the other side, there's no way I'm giving him Christian Kirk for that. But that's just the world that we live in. People read, oh, he already said 1,400. Well, that's real.
Yeah, go ahead and pull the top 100 wide receivers in the NFL, and they're all going to tell you they're going for 1,400 yards this season. That's the mentality you need to have if you're a prime athlete. But
That's
Dustin,
right.
let's try to get
So,
back on track here. Same question to you. Who is going to be the highest paid wide receiver this offseason? Or
Well,
sorry,
I'm gonna-
Travis.
yeah.
I think
Question to you. Who is the
I actually
highest paid
like
wide
that.
receiver?
I like that line of thinking from Dustin as well. I think between Juju and Lazard, one of them will end up in Kansas City.
Whoa.
And I don't think that whoever that is going to have a huge contract. I think it could be a 1 or 2. That's just kind of how Kansas City operates, and people are okay with that because they want to be a part of that team. Whereas Jacoby Myers, I think, like you said earlier, that's probably the easy name to get the Christian Kirk type deal. Yeah, I don't see somebody like DJ Chark or Odell getting money like that. So yeah, it's Myers versus Juju versus Lazard. I don't know that Lazard would get paid more than those guys, but if a team gets desperate and they need somebody that can really do it all, Lazard, I feel like I know he's one of your guys, Dave. I still believe that he's a great player.
Please don't be the Bears.
And he
Please
can
don't
do
be the
so
Bears.
much more, obviously, than just catching the ball. I mean,
Yeah.
you see him out there. He's like a fullback, 40 yards downfield, just like plowing people out of the way for somebody out in the open field. I mean, he's a
Which
lot of fun.
Kansas
in what he
City
does.
loves. I
Exactly.
feel like he would have so much fun there because he's like, tell me what you want me to do. I don't need an actual position. I'll just play.
Yeah, Lazard and MVS said, hey, that Aaron Rodgers guy is washed. We're going to go play with a younger version of Aaron Rodgers in Kansas City. But Dustin, as a fellow Bears fan, I know you can just attest to this. How frustrating is it? I mean, you see like Christian Kirk probably wasn't worth $85 million last year, but Jacksonville had to offer that because Christian Kirk would have probably played for $20 million less in Kansas City or with, Josh Allen or something like that. That's the same position the Bears are in right now. I think they're going to end up spending. I think this is my answer to the question. The highest paid wide receiver is going to be whoever the Bears end up having to sign because it's a tough sell. Hey, you want to come play in Chicago? You might lose your fingers in the cold come December when we're playing outside. And Justin Fields was probably going to run the ball more than he's going to throw the ball. But I'm completely with you. If you're Alan Lazard and you can go play in Kansas City 2 years, $20 million, that's almost more attractive than getting a 3-year, $35 million in Chicago. So that's my answer is whoever the Bears sign, because they're going to have to pay up to convince somebody to come to Chicago.
That's true.
I don't think the Bears are. I think everybody wants the Bears to bring in a big name. I don't think it's happening this offseason.
Chase Claypool. That's it. That's
I
the
think
guy.
I legitimately think that they believe. I like Claypool.
No?
I do.
You do?
I do.
I don't.
Call me crazy. I look. It wasn't pretty last year. But I think. What I've heard and what I've seen from this front office in Chicago, they're being very frugal. They're wanting to build this rebuild from the inside out. I think they're okay waiting on receiver. I think they know that they're going to get a haul of picks. I think they can use that on the guy they want, not the guy that is dictated to them by whatever free agents are available. So I think they're going to wait. I think they're going to hold pat. I think that would be the right move because in the past, Chicago has paid more for guys that aren't necessarily going to be as productive per dollar than other guys that they can get. I think that would be the smart move. Frustrating as a fan, but probably the smart move.
So
I will
Mooney
come
goes
back and
over
give you your
1,000?
flowers. Mooney over 1,000. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, Mooney is 100% somebody I'll be targeting if they don't go out and get somebody, because I think Mooney is the better receiver than Claypool. And I think people are going to get enamored with Claypool because he's young, he's big, and he's fast. 3 things that fantasy football players love, but he's also not that good of a route runner and not that good at catching the ball. And I think
Which
I'd
is
prefer
important
Mooney
as
over
a receiver.
And a head
Right.
case, yeah.
All right, let's stick on wide receivers, though, and free agent wide receivers. Travis, you mentioned him briefly here. So Odell Beckham, 2 ACL tears now, has taken over a year off of football. I mean, the reason I'm asking this question is because I saw Greg Rosenthal on NFL.com had Odell Beckham ranked as the 8th best free agent and the number 1 wide receiver in this class. Ooh. I don't think he can contribute to an NFL field anymore. So there are people that are all over the place on Odell Beckham. Travis, start us off. Do you think that he can contribute still?
That's tricky. I want to say yes. I don't know that he, from a fantasy standpoint, would be a top 25 guy, but I do feel like with experience, if he's fully healthy, his talent level is undeniable. So I feel like if he finds a team that is not asking him to do too much and just, I don't know that it's necessarily a snap count thing, but just to where it's a comfortable spot for him with a good quarterback, I feel like he could be fairly valuable. I don't know that he's number 1 wide receiver. I wouldn't take him over Jacoby Myers, but I think Odell Beckham is still going to have value. Yes.
Yeah, and I think landing spot is so important here because if he takes a 1-year deal with Kansas City, 1-year deal with Buffalo, then all of a sudden everybody's getting excited about Odell. But
how old is he? Is he 30 yet?
Yeah, I think he might be turning 31. If he's not, I got to look this up now because I'm not sure, but I think he's 30 going on 31. Yeah, he'll be 31 before the season ends.
The market will not be
he's
good.
Practically dust then.
I'm changing my tone. I thought he was like 28. It's
as you can tell, Dustin and Travis are dynasty enthusiasts because 31.
You're telling me that the number after the 3, which is astronomical, is a 1 instead of a 0?
It's not just about the
Throw
age,
it out!
but if you look at the whole picture with him, like a 30-year-old Odell is so different than a 30-year-old Tyler Lockett.
For sure.
Those are night and day different production. I think teams look at Julio Jones, AJ Green, and they see this drastic fall off that's been happening with these guys coming back from injury who are 30 plus, the market won't be what Odell wants it to be.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And that's why, I mean, he was saying that he wanted to play last year, and there seemed to be no interest from any team. I mean, we're looking at Stephon Diggs, who stepped back in Buffalo. This team was desperate. They called up Cole Beasley. They brought in Cole Beasley off the streets rather than Odell Beckham. I think that says a lot about where Odell is at this point in his career.
I think a lot of that, though, not to go off on another tangent, but I think a lot of that is due to the timing of the injury and the type of injury. He tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, which is already like the latest you can tear something. And then you're asking him to come back during the season, which I think a lot of the NFL knew wasn't reasonable. So I think that might have played. I think he was kind of playing it down. I think the NFL was also playing it down into, well, we want him to contribute during the regular season. That wasn't going to happen. The playoffs were always seemingly going to be when he was going to come back. And obviously, you're not going to bring in a guy and hopefully he's contributing. You're just going to roll with the guys that know the system. And Odell, see you next year, which I think he's going to be contributing this year to be counterpoint to this conversation.
I think
I'll attest to it. I had a shoulder injury when I was in high school, 15 years old. I was out for 2 weeks, and I was back on the field, no problem. I had a shoulder injury in May, almost a year ago, and I still can't throw. So, I mean, once you hit 30, it's a very different beast, these injuries.
I do feel like he could negatively affect a wide receiver too, like we were talking about with Elijah Moore. If the Jets are like, oh, we'll sign Odell for a decent price, Aaron Rodgers comes to town, I think that really hurts Elijah Moore. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he's going to New York.
Let's talk about running backs, and unfortunately, the running backs. This looked like it was going to be a really fun offseason, and then. The Raiders and the Cowboys and the Giants, they just had to take the wind out of our sails and just cut the top off of that free agency class. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard are all returning to their respective teams. However, we're looking at some really interesting cap casualties, and I just wrote an article about this. Looks like Leonard Fournette is already basically a free agent. They haven't officially cut him yet, but it's going to happen. But some other interesting names that are out there: Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook. We're looking at some guys that might be on the wrong side of the age curve, but could be hitting free agency where there are a lot of teams desperate for running backs. So, Dustin, I'll throw this question to you first, but who do you think is most likely to be cut and end up on a new team?
So you mentioned Leonard Fournette obviously already looking like he's out, he's gone. So not to take the cop out there, but I was talking to Travis about this before the show, and I've been thinking more and more, and if the rumblings are right, I think Dalvin Cook could actually be on his way out. Usage was down. They don't want to use him as a workhorse, and he's already come out and said that he's not going to be the guy to take a pay cut. Can't blame him, but you also can't blame the team for, moving on from a 28-year-old running back. That's essentially, for those of you who don't play Dynasty, that is 65 in Dynasty years. He is pretty much in retirement age. So, I expect Cook to be the one to be moving on to another team with Minnesota in a hefty, salary cap hole right now.
And we see it quickly with running backs. I mean, anybody that's been playing fantasy football and especially dynasty fantasy football for a long time, if a guy is 26, 27, 28, and he starts to show any signs of decline, he's not bouncing back the next year. I mean, once they start showing signs of decline, it is full speed downhill. And that's probably where Dalvin Cook is right now. So just riff in a little bit here. If Dalvin Cook does get cut, do they try to bring in one of these potential younger free agents? Do they maybe try to move up from 24 and draft Bijan? Do they hope to get Gibbs at 24? Or do they just say, Alexander Madison, next man up, step on in, Ty Chandler, you're the backup? What do you think happens if Dalvin Cook leaves?
I think they keep Cook. I think they keep Madison. I think they run it back. But the question was, what happens if they don't keep Dalvin Cook? I don't know. I'm not.
They draft.
Dustin knows so much more about rookies and the NFL draft and prospects. It's never been my forte, so I can't say a specific rookie, but I find it hard to believe they would let a Dalvin Cook type running back leave just to replace him with a Mixon or a Henry. You might as well keep the guy who knows the system, loves the city, all of that, works well with the team. If you're going to replace him, it would probably be in the draft. There's not a whole lot of running backs that you would find that are his age or later that you would want over Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, if they're going to bring somebody in, they're going to have to bring in one of those much cheaper options. If you're cutting Dalvin Cook, you're probably not bringing in anybody better or more expensive than Kareem Hunt at that point. I mean, you got to go to the draft pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting with all of these potential guys. I mean, we're looking at Joe Mixon. I don't know what's going on with him. I'm not going to try to speculate on any of the legal issues going on, but I mean, he could make, for a good satellite back somewhere. But then Derrick Henry, I mean, if Derrick Henry gets cut by the Titans, there is no position or no team that he's going to land on where he's going to be getting 300 carries a year. It's just not going to happen. So if he gets cut, he immediately is an 8th, 9th, 10th round startup value. I mean, he is dust in the eyes of dynasty managers. So there is so much, pretty much what this article, and I'm going to plug my content here because I'm shameless and I don't care. I just wrote an article trying to break down the entire running back landscape and doing best to assess this. And I said, there's really only 2 things you should worry about right now: age and talent, because any position that you think is available, anybody that you think is, well, this guy's going to be a 3rd down back on this team, or this guy's going to be lead back on this team, by the end of next week, everything that you think is true, any role that you think exists is no longer going to exist. So right now, get the young guys that are showing any signs of talent, because those are the only safe bets you can get right now in dynasty leagues.
Yeah.
So I already talked about how Barkley, Jacobs, and Pollard are gone. So Dustin, who is the best free agent right now?
I love this question because there are some names I like to sit here and I like to dream, Dave. I like to just sit here and imagine guys in different jerseys, and 2 names pop up. So I like we can
guys
talk about
in jerseys, just
guys in clothes, man. That's what I'm all about. Different colors, all anyway. 2 names. Other than the darling that anyone wants to talk about right now is David Montgomery, I want to focus more on Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary, because 2 guys, you can utilize them all over the field. We saw some pass catching prowess from Devin Singletary, later in the season, so that's a part of his game that I wasn't sure was super prevalent. And then Miles Sanders, what the heck's going on? Is he coming back to Philadelphia, or is he going to be going in, if he goes and plays, the plug and play role for someone else, does he go to the Bills and immediately take over the number 1 role there? Who knows? But those 2 guys, Devin Singletary and Miles Sanders, I'm pretty excited about to see where they're going.
Yeah, this is a Damian Harris show. I was really hoping you were going to say Damian Harris, but
I'm not
I'll give you those
again.
2 guys.
We're not talking about Damian Harris, Dave.
I still believe in Damian Harris too.
Thank you, Travis. All right, there's one of us.
No, bad. That's Jordan Howard.
He's a good player.
So let me ask you.
He's a good player.
I want to see Damian Harris in Miami so badly. Where even if he's in a split role out in that wide zone scheme, I feel like he was just never properly utilized. Like, he can do so much more than just slamming the ball in at the goal line. He is so shifty in space. He actually has shockingly soft hands, and it seems like back to his college days, nobody has ever utilized him as a pass catcher. But when he has to, he's great at it.
Yeah, I haven't sold him anywhere cheap. Not gonna do it.
I actually bought him recently. I flipped I flipped Ramondre Stevenson for Khalil Herbert, Damian Harris, and a second.
I like that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
also,
and
you said
it's
something pretty
very likely 2 starters.
Yeah, and I should also say it is a 20-team league. So getting Damian Harris and Khalil Herbert, those are 2 guys that I can at least start. Where Ramondre Stevenson, I don't know. I'm trying to sell the bag on Ramondre Stevenson wherever I can. I don't want to get caught holding another Patriots running back. Exactly. So Travis, same question to you real quickly.
Yeah, I have a sleeper running back. I agree with Dustin, Miles Sanders. I've been a huge fan of Miles Sanders for a couple years now. We did show after show during the season, and I said, this guy can ball. He can ball. The tape doesn't lie. It's just Philly was tough for him. He was incredibly efficient. It's hard not to be in that system. But James Robinson, out of nowhere, I feel like he's still young enough. I think he's the same age as Damian Harris. Another full offseason removed from the injury. He was a top 5 running back through week 3 last year. He was a top 15 to 20 running back through week 7. And then the trade happened. After that, it just wasn't a good fit. And the Jets coaches were very vocal. Nothing's wrong with James Robinson. This is just not working out how we had hoped that trade was going to.
Interesting.
When you have Breece Hall, obviously he's not going to play. Breece Hall gets hurt. They go get James Robinson. Zonovan Knight did better than everybody expected. He kind of came out of nowhere. But I do feel like James Robinson can contribute to a team. Again, another full season removed from his injury. We've seen him be very, very good now for multiple years. So right situation, right system for him. I think he could crowd up a backfield that can really frustrate fantasy owners, but I think he can be an effective NFL running back.
I'm not seeing it, Travis. I'm not going to push back too hard.
I know
but
everybody has written him off.
I was tweeting out the other day that you should sell James Robinson for a fourth if you can get it. I am just so concerned because even before the Achilles injury the year before, he was showing signs of dwindling efficiency. And then last year, there were a lot of touchdowns that kind of propped up his fantasy value. But on a rushing yards over expectation per attempt, he was the least inefficient running back in the NFL. And you can chalk some of that up to the Achilles, but I've been saying it for years. I just can't help but feel like James Robinson is following the Jordan Howard career path. Get 2 years on a rebuilding squad.
So it's over.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Dustin said he may never play again.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I mean, Jordan Howard, you wouldn't know it, but he still is technically in the league. I'm looking at last year. He had one rush for 1 yard last year. So Jordan Howard is still alive and well. But
way to go getting your benefits, Jordan.
But it does scare me because James Robinson, I just see, a rebuilding team, and he had 2 years where he was just fed volume. And then when they made the switch and they said, we're ready to contend, they spent premium draft capital on Travis Etienne, just like Jordan Howard, fed volume, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And then as soon as they said, we're making the switch, we're ready to contend, they spent draft capital on David Montgomery, and Jordan Howard hasn't been able to find a fit since. I'm very scared that is the path that James Robinson will follow. But you're entitled to your opinion.
I can see it.
As always,
speak your truth, man. Happening. But let's say if Houston's not going to pay for a big name running back, they're not in a position to do that right now. Dameon Pierce is good enough to be the starting running back. Behind him was Dare and Burkhead.
It was bad.
So Dave is kind enough to have us on the show, and you're making him talk about James Robinson.
James Robinson behind Dameon Pierce, I feel like he can give you at least some sort of depth.
Look at the names he wants us to talk about, and you picked this one. How dare you?
I was hoping, when you said Dave. Sleeper, I thought we were talking Deonta Foreman.
Not asleep. Not asleep, Travis.
We were talking Rashad Penny, maybe. But
right.
I like it. And if James Robinson makes any sort of impact this year, you'll be the first person, Travis. I will crop this and I will say, you guys should have listened to Travis. He was saying this back in March. You fools were all sleeping. I will have your back 100%, Travis. Let's wrap up the show by talking about tight ends here. You guys got another 5-10 minutes or so? We can talk tight ends?
Sure. Of course. Cool. I love tight ends. We always end our shows with tight ends, by the way.
I didn't know that. Well, this is perfect then. How about it? Serendipitous. I want to talk about Mike Gesicki first because he is leading this free agency class, and it seems like the problem with Mike Gesicki isn't his skill. It has just been schematic fits. He has had 5 offensive coordinators throughout his years in Miami, and it seemed like Adam Gase had some big plans for him, and then Adam Gase was let go in the middle of Mike Gesicki's rookie year, and he's just kind of been in a figment of dynasty managers' imaginations ever since. So, Travis, start us off here. What team do you think would be the best fit for Mike Gesicki?
For himself, for fantasy, I like it in Detroit. I think he can give you that TJ Hawkinson type role. When you look at TJ Hawkinson, 6'5", 250, 4'7", 40. Gesicki right there, 6'6", 247, 4'5", 40. They're the same build. They're the same type of athlete. Hawkinson, 7 targets per game in that offense. Tight end 7 or better in points per game for the last 3 seasons in Detroit. There is a role there for a very valuable fantasy tight end. Again, tight end 7 for 3 years in a row or better. It doesn't take Gesicki just having some sort of breakout, like, now I'm a good player. He is a good player and a role that is wide open for them. I can see Dan Campbell saying, come on over here, watch the TJ Hawkinson film, just do that, and you'll produce.
I don't dislike that at all because Hawkinson really wasn't blocking all that much. I mean, he was used almost primarily as a pass catcher there. I could see it. I do like that call out. That's one I hadn't thought of because you just think with Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift and Jamison Williams that it's already kind of crowded, but TJ Hawkinson has been able to eat historically in that offense. So
21% target share for over
yeah.
3 years.
Wow.
Gesicki wouldn't get that, but you throw him at 18%, that's a top 10 tight end.
Yeah, the bar to clear top 10 tight end is not that high, and I could see Gesicki hitting that on a lot of teams, but especially in Detroit. Same question to you though, Dustin. What do you think would be the best fit for Gesicki?
I mean, I feel like this one's fairly obvious, but this is the one that I think would just light the tight end landscape on fire. Is if he signed with Cincinnati. I feel like if he goes to Cincinnati, Hayden Hurst is out of town. You go and look at the money right now that they've committed to the position, which is essentially nothing. And they've got cap space. They've got like the 5th or 6th most cap space in the NFL this upcoming free agency season. I think it's a marriage that makes sense. I think that his skill set, the way that they use the tight end, they've got other blocking guys that they could put in there. They don't have to utilize him in 11 personnel. I like it. I like him to be in Cincinnati, and I think, like I said, I think that makes the most sense here.
Yeah, I could see that, and I think that's what everybody is hoping for. I mean, that would be so fun. I think my fear, though, is that if that does happen, Gesicki is all of a sudden getting drafted in like the 6th, 7th round of best ball leagues. People are looking at him as a top 5 tight end, and in that case, I want nothing to do with Gesicki. So the takeaway from this conversation we're having right now is if you can squeeze in a Mike Gesicki trade and acquire him within the next few days, do it, because if he lands in any sort of favorable spot, whether it is, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Bengals, he's skyrocketing in value. But let me throw one other question out here, because this is a shockingly deep tight end class, and I feel like people aren't talking about it, but free agents we're looking at: Dalton Schultz, Foster Moreau, who has kind of been in the shadow of Darren Waller, but really is a pretty good player in his own right. Robert Tonyan has flashed here and there. Hayden Hurst, who you mentioned, Irv Smith, Austin Hooper. There are a lot of, ex-fantasy relevant tight ends in this class. So, Dustin, who's a guy that you think can kind of surprise us with a new team, similar to what Evan Ingram did last year?
A guy that has not been able to stay healthy, and I'm excited for him to get his opportunity elsewhere, is Irv Smith. I'm really excited to see what Irv Smith can do with it. I mean, he's essentially your prototypical H-back, essentially, that you can utilize all over the field. I feel like, given the right scenario, I'd love to see him in a complementary role. And again, we always plug players into the top offenses, but look, if he goes and he is the Chargers tight end, or if he plays a backseat role to Irv Smith, to Travis Kelce in Kansas City, I think he can still find success and be the heir apparent to a guy like Kelce. I think Irv Smith is a higher tier asset than people want to give him credit for due to the health and durability concerns. But I think given some time and some acclimation to one of these top offenses, that's an asset that you can acquire on the cheap, and his value is only going to go up because it's almost at the floor right now.
And he's still just 24. I mean, that is crazy that he's still just 24 years old. It feels like this kid's been in the league since I was in high school, and he's 24 years old. Same question to you, though, Travis. Is there a guy that you think can kind of surprise people on a new team this year?
I'm not seeing any surprises in this class. I think we know what these guys are. I'm just really hoping that Dalton Schultz stays in Dallas. I think that is the clear best fit for him. I don't think if you just throw him on a team, you're going to get Dalton Schultz production like we've seen. I think he and Dak have a great rapport. I think his role in the Dallas offense is very safe, which means he'll probably leave and chase a little bit more money than they'll give him. And
he's going to the Patriots.
To die,
to join,
We want, I guess, isn't Jonnu Smith leaving?
That's what they've said. They said he's a potential cap cut, but I can't get hurt by Jonnu Smith again, man.
No, but I mean,
year after year.
If he were to go, if Schultz were to go there,
I could see him being a complimentary piece to Hunter Henry, and both of them being fantasy relevant. Yeah,
that's a Bill Belichick move.
I just hope he stays in Dallas. I really do.
Yeah, and we didn't see it at all in the regular season. Dalton Schultz was such a disappointment in the regular season. And then as soon as the season ended and fantasy didn't matter anymore, then Dalton Schultz is going for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns every single week. It was so frustrating for anybody that had Dalton Schultz shares throughout the offseason.
Sure.
Well, we did it, not even planned, but we wrapped up the show on tight ends just like you guys do over at Losing Sucks.
Yeah.
Guys, want to thank you both for making the time today. Before we sign off, though, one more time, let everyone know where they can find you on social media. Who wants to take it?
Dustin, you got it.
Yeah, I'll take it, man. Y'all can find us over on Twitter at Losing Sucks. Make sure you check us out on YouTube over at youtube.com/losingsucks. Check out our website at losingsucksfantasy.com. And, of course, As always, I am on Twitter at Dustin Blanton. No vowels in that last name. I babysit the Losing Sucks Twitter. So make sure you check us out. And, of course, we like to always sign off when we're talking of losing sucks. Don't do it.
I love that. I will try my best to remember that when I sign off at the end of the show after doing all of my plugs. I'll film the outro after we are done here, but I want to remind everyone to subscribe, youtube.com/footballguys if you haven't already. Leave us a 5-star review if you like the show, because that's going to help draw an additional audience to me, which is good stuff. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you haven't already. That's going to help drive some extra audience to my show, which is going to help me grow. If you haven't already, be sure to follow at Dave Kluge on Twitter. Give us a subscription at youtube.com/footballguys. And like our good friends Dustin and Travis said, losing sucks. Don't do it.